Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Rev RX podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad to have our special guest today. Could not wait to jump into this conversation with you. Dr. Kelly Flanagan, welcome to the show, brother. Glad you're here.
Reverend, it is great to be here.
I answer to a lot of names, and that's one of them. Yeah, some maybe we shouldn't repeat on the show, but
Right. Especially in triggered moments, right?
that's right. That's right. But you have done tremendous work in this world of emotional regulation, introspection,
Mm,
mature
mm,
response to triggers.
yeah.
And it's something that I have been able to apply to my life. And I just shared with you, actually was able to take some of the information that you've put out and talk to my 9-year-old daughter about it. And it's to the point where she can understand it. So thank you from a personal level
Yeah.
for your in-depth work in this field and being able to take the complex and make it simple. And so can't wait to share with our audience some of what you have spent your life's work doing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I think when we're triggered, a lot of us feel emotionally about 9 years old. So,
That's right.
if you're going to write a book about it, you better speak at that level. I mean, and by that, I mean, with that sort of simplicity and clarity so that it's really just tangible. So I'm glad to hear that it's helpful.
Yes, absolutely. You're helping so many families. And before we jump into the topic, though, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear a little more about you. Can you just
Yeah.
help us to get to know you a little better?
Yeah, clinical psychologist by training. Met my wife, who is also named Kelly, spelled exactly the same way at
Awesome.
Penn State in graduate school. We are Dr. Kelly and Dr. Kelly Flanagan. We just actually got back from traveling for a speaking event, and it's just such a hoot at the airport. Like the ticketing agent and the TSA, they always do double takes. So we met in graduate school, became a clinical psychologist, but not most of what I learned in graduate school really didn't help me personally understand this shame problem that I was carrying around, and really not trusting my worthiness and how I was created in God's image. And so I went on my own personal healing journey, and that led to me writing publicly. Started in 2012, blogging, wound up publishing my first book, Lovable, Embracing What's Truest About You So You Can Truly Embrace Your Life, in 2017. And a book written basically from a father to his kids, but also to the little kids still living on in me, about my inherent worthiness and their inherent worthiness. Well, the reality was, like, that got in at a head level for me, and I would be living from that sense of worthiness and treating everyone else as worthy creatures, like 90, I don't know the percentage, 95% of the time, and then 5% of the time I get triggered, and it was like none of it had happened.
Yeah. All that's out the window.
All of it goes out the window in that moment. And that really culminated for me during COVID. It was a stressful year for me. I got triggered near the beginning of the year, before the virus even hit, and I blew up my business partnership with my best friend and the friendship, and COVID hits. Kids are schooling from home, becoming zombies, as I called them. And then there was a Sunday afternoon. My wife had convinced me, finally, like, all the public pools are closed. Now we've got to get that above ground pool I've been trying to convince you, of for years. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's do
Now's
it.
the time. Now's the time.
Right. Now's the time. So, like everybody else. So we got it installed, and it was time to fill it up. And we went out on a Sunday morning, and my wife put the hose over the side of the pool, and she put a rock on it to anchor it there. Well, the rock wasn't heavy enough, and we did not go back out until the afternoon.
No.
And I went out in the afternoon, and the pool was bone dry, and the backyard was like a muddy lake, and I got triggered, right? And I'm like,
Mm.
well, if I don't want to set my marriage back a month, I better, or more, I better just get out of here. I need to go for a bike ride. So I hop on my bike to blow off steam. Not the wisest thing to do, to cycle at 30 miles an hour on asphalt when you're just angry and not paying attention. And I almost hit a car, went over the handlebars of my bike. I broke my left collarbone in two places on the asphalt, and it never actually healed. They say that bones heal stronger in the broken places, but this is called a fibrous tissue non-union fracture. So I've got like two hinges in my collarbone now, and it made for this like really long, slow, painful recovery. So I got to New Year's Eve going into 2021, and I'm like literally looking for like fitness resolutions because I'm totally out of shape because of the long recovery. And in the middle of it, I come across this incredible quote by Michael Singer: "Don't let anything in life be important enough that you're willing to close your heart over it."
Mm.
And it like hit me harder than the asphalt road had, like Yeah, man, it's not my situations
Yeah.
that have got me here. It's my reactions to my situations. And I need to learn how to keep my heart open in these situations and not get triggered and make the situation worse than it is. So my resolution going into 2021 was moment to moment, I will notice my heart closing and try to open it back up.
Wow.
And I put the word in try from the beginning because apparently I knew ahead of time how hard that was going to be.
Yeah.
And it was. And basically it launched me on a journey. And I realized there just wasn't a lot of help out there around this. And that if there's going to be a curriculum for open heartedness and turning our triggers into togetherness, I was going to have to create it. And so that's what I did over the next few years. And that resulted in this book of mine, The Road Less Triggered, where I lay it all out.
Awesome. And such an important word. You're right. There's not much help out there.
Mm-mm.
And I think we'd mentioned offline this whole issue of being triggered.
Yeah,
It's part of the human condition. I mean, it's
absolutely.
universal. We all relate to that,
Yeah,
but I don't know that we know what to do with it.
that's right. That's right.
That's me. That's been me for a large part of my life. And sometimes we call it other things. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, it may come out as like anger issues, or
Right.
we need
Exactly.
anger management. We need,
Yep.
but really, what you're helping us do is get to the root of the problem
Yep.
and help us to control what we can control,
That's right.
and not try to control the things we can't. And I love that story. Untethered Soul, that's another great book
Yeah. Yeah.
for those of you listening. Wonderful quote. And I love how that launched you. And there's so many different ways we can go with this, but I'd like to talk about being open hearted for a minute. That's a phrase that I can't say I've always been familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can you unpack that for us just a little bit? What does it mean to be open hearted, close hearted, and how does that vision kind of impact your work when it comes to being triggered?
Yeah. So I've defined open heartedness in this book as, and in my life, as the willingness to fully experience the present moment as it is without doing anything to it, especially when it's not going the way we want.
Yeah,
I'll say it one more time.
that's
The
good.
willingness to fully experience the present moment as it is without doing anything to it, especially when it's not going the way we want. And that doesn't, a lot of people think that means passivity. It means, oh, well, you start letting things happen.
Yeah,
It's
check
not
out.
to
Yeah,
it's not to say that you're not going to respond in the next moment. It just means you're not going to react in this moment, right? You're going to take a moment to sit on it, and then your response will be wiser in the next moment. One of the things I address really early on in the book is that an open heart doesn't make your boundaries weaker; it makes your boundaries wiser, right? So you're going to have a response instead of a reaction if you can just practice open heartedness for a moment and get centered and still within what's happening, right? So that's how I define open heart. And to me, it's the practice that moves us from triggers to togetherness, right? I don't think of open heartedness as a condition that you sort of snap your fingers. It's a practice. When things aren't going the way you want, you said something I think really important. You said we don't know how to react when we're triggered. And the reality is, our nervous system thinks it knows how to react in that moment, right? It's wired to deal decisively with threats out there. So when we're triggered and our nervous system activates, we jump right into reacting to our people or the situation or what we see as the problem. And we are very unwise. We are acting like, at that point, pretty much every other mammal on the planet. And we haven't tapped into the things that make us uniquely human. So, open heartedness is the practice of learning how to get still for a minute and fully experience this thing and then act wisely from our best and highest human capacities.
yeah. Super wise is this whole process because, all right, something happens, we're triggered,
Mm-hmm.
and you can either respond or you can react.
Yep. Yep.
And that's the way I like to think of it, in those words, is respond or react. And so many times we react in the moment.
That's right.
And you're right, that's that animal instinct in
Yep.
us,
Yep.
and that's not our best selves,
No,
if
it's
it's even ourselves at all. I mean,
well,
if it's
it's important and we need it, like if you're walking through a dark parking garage at midnight and you hear footsteps rapidly coming up behind you, you better have that nervous system reaction. If your kid steps out in front of a car, right, you better have that nervous system reaction. So we don't want to get rid of it, but we do want to recognize that in a number of situations, operating only from it is not going to lead to the best result. So one of the things I say in the book is that a reaction is a failure of self-regulation, whereas a response is the fruit of self-regulation, right? That's really the difference between a reaction and a response is just, can I get regulated long enough to operate as a whole person rather than just a nervous system?
That's absolutely right, and I love the way you word that. And in my role as pastor, I do a lot of counseling. I do marital counseling. I do premarital counseling, which is fun. Marital counseling is not all that fun because you're entering
So
in. Yeah, you're coming into it, and it's like, hey, we need you to do a miracle, right?
yeah, that's right.
We're on the cusp here. It's so easy once you kind of are aware
Mm,
of some of these response versus reaction
yes,
stories. It
yes,
plays out so much.
yes,
These triggered responses, or triggered reactions, I guess I should say, are responsible for a lot of the communication issues that we have,
that's right.
and are responsible for a lot of the relationship issues that we
That's
have.
right. Yeah,
What have you seen in your experience?
that's right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I was my niche in the clinical psychology training was, and my specialty was communication, conflict resolution amongst couples. Marriages in particular. I mean, that was my dominant practice out in the outpatient mental health field was couples work. And in that space, you're trained to equip couples with communication tools that they will then use to resolve problems in their relationship and then presumably be happier. But one of the things I discovered early on in my practice is that the couples I was teaching the skills to, number one, a lot of them already had the skills. Like they were talented doctors and attorneys and business people and teachers and stay-at-home parents of really busy households, and their communication skills worked just fine until they hit a moment in their relationship.
Right.
And then, as I say in the book, then they would just close their communication toolbox and lose all access to those skills. So, um, couples work has actually become much more enjoyable for me now that I
Yeah.
realize that,
Yeah.
like it's so demoralizing. You teach a couple skills, you help them solve a problem, and it all seems to be going better. And then the next week they come in and it's just a different problem and they shut their toolbox again and they don't know how to keep it open. So now the work for me just narrows in very specifically on when is your heart closing. And we're just going to pause around that moment because communication doesn't break down between people. It turns out it breaks down within people when our heart closes and we lose access to our skills. So we're just going to find that moment where your heart closes and we're just going to press pause on it. And we are going to hover around that and work to get your heart back open. And once we do, once the nervous system's calm and your heart's open, well, lo and behold, you got access to all those skills again, and the two of you do just fine together.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things now to have, like, get to the conclusion of an hour of couples coaching, and I'll say, "Hey, did we solve any problems? Did we solve the problem you came in with? No. Are your hearts open? Yes. Do you feel good about the hour? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right." And
That's
you
right.
start to realize that for all of us, all we want to do is be open hearted and in connection. Right. And so the issue isn't the problem that we're trying to solve, it's the fact that our hearts are closing while we're trying to solve it.
Yeah, and you've given me some resources too to enter into those messy situations and be able to
Good.
bring some clarity.
I'm glad to hear that.
Because it's a lot of the same things over and over,
Yeah,
just that they look different,
that's right.
different symptoms of the same root issue. Is that we lose capacity to be able to think wisely, to be able to
Hmm.
communicate well, to be able to access the tools that are already at our disposal because we become triggered. So maybe we can spend some time talking about that moment of being triggered
Yeah,
because we talked about a little bit of the animal instinct in us, but it triggering, and that's something that's kind of a key word in our world today, isn't it?
it is.
A lot of times I've actually seen trigger warnings on
Hmm.
several different podcasts and different
Right.
things. So, hey, this may trigger you. It kind of becomes a hot button topic, but I think we're doing a lot of work around that really helps bring
Right.
clarity,
Yep.
showing that, hey, triggered is a state that we maybe don't want to necessarily avoid, but we want to make sure that we're aware
Mm.
that this may bring a triggered moment to us so that we can think our way through it. But when those words come or when the
Yes.
situation comes, maybe it's the wife complaining about the
Mm.
classic illustration about the toilet seat left open or whatever.
That's right.
Divorces don't happen because you left the toilet seat open. Divorces happen because you don't know how to communicate around it.
That's right. That's
But
right.
what happens in that moment to our bodies? We talked a little bit about nervous system, but
Yes.
it's I guess some protection
That's right.
mechanisms too. Can you talk us through that from maybe a psychological standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, triggered, ironically, triggered is a triggering word
Yeah.
for some people, right?
Some
They're
people
like,
roll their eyes when they yeah.
I know. Well, and and there's a reason for that. Like, you see a TikTok influencer at Starbucks, saying they didn't get the right kind of cold foam, and they're telling a million followers they're triggered. And it's like
That's
that
right.
doesn't really mean anything anymore.
No.
But The reason I ultimately chose to settle on that word and even put it in the title is it is the word that people use, like, and everyone knows exactly what that means right away,
That's
like
right.
when you're triggered. So even though some people have sort of cheapened the word, I don't think that it necessarily changes the reality for all of us. And you're getting at a really great point, which is in a triggered moment, like one of the defining factors is that our nervous system is activated, and it bears asking, why is our nervous system activated when, to use your example, our wife says we didn't put down the toilet, right? Like, your nervous system is a highly evolved sort of system that is designed to help you deal with existential threats, mortal danger, right? It's only supposed to come online when, like, you run into a tiger on the Serengeti, right? So it's like, wow, my wife said I didn't put the toilet seat up and my nervous system got activated. That for all of us should be like full stop,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, so there's more going on here than meets the eye. If a part of my biology thinks that I'm being mortally threatened right now. And so in the in the book, we talk about, number one, you got to get calm. You have to use your body signals to recognize you're about to get more and more activated. You got to disrupt your defensive responses and then get your nervous system regulated. And if you don't do that first, all is lost, right? So we spent a third of the book talking about that, which, because I learned that back in 2021, that if I didn't do that, there was just nothing else, game over.
Yeah.
Then the
Space is
question,
important. Yeah.
yeah, it is. And then in that space, right, what do you, now that you've created the space for yourself with a calm nervous system, to ask the question, what's just happened there when she said I didn't put the toilet seat down and I acted like I was about to be killed? What is going on there? And what we explore in the second half of the book is that in our triggered moments, one of one of the things you run into when you do deep work with people is, they always say, and rightly so, I don't see the point of going and digging around in my past, right? That just seems like a search and destroy expedition. And of course you'll find some, I actually say, I agree with you. I don't think we want to go digging in your past, but what's happening in your triggered moment is that your past is pushing its way into the present. So we don't have to go looking for your past. It comes looking for you, right? And so there was a time in our lives as human beings where if we did something wrong, if someone was upset with us, a parent or a guardian, it was an existential threat, right? Like right now, if my wife, I mean, literally, if my wife says I didn't put the toilet seat down, as an adult, it's like, it doesn't, sorry, or I'll go do it, or I mean, it's a nothing burger, right? But as a child, you are completely dependent upon your people, on your parents, on your authority figures, on your tribe. And as human beings, we're unique in this. Like, most mammals on the planet have to live in that state of dependency for like 3 months.
Hmm.
We have to live in it for decades,
Yes.
right? And so there was a time where if you felt unseen, misunderstood, or unsupported, my three sort of ingredients in loneliness, then it was scary.
Hmm.
And what happened is that scared response to losing the favor of your tribe or losing the presence of your people got baked into your nervous system. I just call it like the ordinary trauma of being human,
That's
right?
right.
Like, they're not happy with me, they could leave me or they could punish me. I'm not going to be protected the way that I need to. And so when your wife says, for instance, I would keep going back, it could be 1,000 different things, but your wife says you didn't put the toilet seat down, there's actually a nervous system reaction that's baked into you that says, oh, if I lose her favor, if I lose her approval, then I'll either lose her presence or I'll lose her protection,
Yeah.
and that's what's happening in that moment. And so we
Mm.
need to create the space to learn how to walk ourselves through that reaction so we can get to the other side of it and have a response.
And that's a really important thing to think about. And I love how you worded all of that. I mean, that gives words to, I think, a lot of times how we feel. And there are trauma and wounds, obviously, in some people's lives that maybe have made that response a little exaggerated. But I think
Absolutely.
I think that's what makes triggered such part of the just a universal experience, because we've all experienced that, being dependent on someone else.
And I just hosted an event, and I was talking with a couple after presenting a couple frameworks, and she said, I don't think I really have any trauma in my childhood. And I think it's important to address that, because I do think we get triggered and people actually get stuck going, either, I've got to find the big capital T trauma that caused this, or I don't even want to go look at this trigger because I'm going to find some big capital T trauma I don't want to deal with, right? And and I just said to her, I said, I got great news for you. You don't have to have any trauma to get triggered. Like, being human as a child was painful enough to sort of set you down this path, and scary enough. In the best of childhoods, just the human condition itself lends itself to this kind of reaction. And you're right. And I don't want to minimize that for some people, they do have big T trauma that contributes to this reaction as well. But I don't think it does us any good to kind of go, well, people with big T trauma get triggered and the rest of us don't, because we know the truth. We're all getting triggered all the time.
That's right. That brings to mind a question for you. To what degree does fear play into some of this? That keeps coming to mind for me. It seems like there's this component of fear of losing someone, fear of losing someone's present, fear of losing protection, or whatever that may be. I
Yes.
think a lot of it may be fear driven. Is that a valid concern or illustration? Hey, there's my
I think
9-year-old right here.
I think I love it's a deeply intuitive question. The framework I had just presented at that event, I basically said, listen, the ordinary trauma of human existence is separation from each other, which is a shock to a child,
That's right.
who is dependent upon their adult attachments. And then the universal pain point that arises from that is a sense of loneliness. And around age 6 to 8, almost every kid gets cognitively developed enough that they can go, wait, this separation and loneliness thing doesn't feel very good. I'm going to try to fix it. I'm going to try to figure out what to do with it. Now, there's a psychological term called locus of control that a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's the idea that you can have either an external locus of control or an internal locus of control. And this is how you assign meaning to events that are happening to you. So I'll give you an example. Say my son loses a high school soccer game and he comes home and he says, oh my gosh, the refs were unfair and the field conditions were terrible. That's an external locus of control. He's assigning the cause of the event to things outside of him. If he comes home and he says, oh my gosh, I didn't hydrate enough and I didn't get enough sleep last night and I need to, go out and train harder, internal locus of control, right? So what I see and what I've noticed is that when a child had an external locus of control to explain their loneliness, basically they exist in a state of fear. They go, man, people can just leave you. Like, you can be the best kid ever and people can just still leave you or punish you or be mean to you or unfair to you. And so there's this experience of being out of control of connection and afraid, and you end up with an identity where you feel sort of undesired, and you worry that that's how like life is going to play out for you. If you had an internal locus of control at that state of childhood, you go, oh, I must be lonely because of something wrong with me.
Yeah, there's something in me that causes that. Yeah,
Exactly. Is there people don't like me, people don't want to be around me, people, so there's something wrong with me I have to fix. And if that's the case, then your dominant emotion is one of more shame than fear. It's there's something wrong with me, I'm undesirable, and now I've got to sort of try to make myself more desirable. And so I would say and that these are sort of the two core ways we move through the world, fear or
yeah,
shame.
yeah.
And we all have a little bit of both, of course, but the question is, when you're triggered and you get in that conflict cycle with your partner, which of these two sort of roles do you tend to inhabit? Because they do tend to pair up in relationships. I very rarely see two people who have a dominant shame response and two people with a dominant fear response together. Usually it's fear and shame playing off each other in a conflict cycle. So yeah, I think there's a lot of fear out there and there's a lot of shame. And if we can hit pause and go, I get a little bit emotional because my wife and I finally did this decently well a couple of weeks ago. We were getting into our conflict cycle and we're like, we're doing it, aren't we? Yeah. Well, what's the reality here? The reality here is I just want to feel connected to you and you just want to feel connected to me. And I don't want to feel alone and you don't want to feel alone. But our ways of trying to get that without vulnerability by being protected and safe are making it worse. They're
That's right.
disconnecting us. They're leaving us more alone. So can we downshift into some vulnerability here and go, all this stuff I'm doing that makes you feel like I don't want to be with you, it's actually the opposite. I just really want to be with you right now. Right.
I love that.
So if we
Yeah,
can help couples make that shift and people in general, then I think there's possibility for new patterns.
absolutely. And new patterns is something that I think we need to realize that, that's okay. I speak to a lot of people, and we say things like, "Yeah, it's just the way that I am.
Mm,
That's just the way I've always been."
yeah.
And man, that's a bad reason to stay stuck, isn't it?
Right.
We can learn new patterns. We can do better. And I love how you mentioned how you're still working through this.
Hmm. Hmm.
You've literally written the book on it.
Yep. That's right.
And so your vulnerability here is really helpful because I think it shows us that this is there doesn't need to be additional shame because we're doing this because
That's right.
we're all still kind of working through this process. We're learning new patterns.
That's right.
Giving ourselves grace in the moments is helpful, but that's the irony is that what we're trying to push towards is actually pushing us further away if we
Exactly.
don't
Yes.
handle it correctly. So why is it so hard? I mean, why is it something that we struggle so much with? Is it just that instinct, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I will not take credit for this. I might have synthesized a bunch of ideas into this particular quote, but one thing I will say is that you don't have a personality, you have a pattern. That really your personality, like I think of like childhood as the period of life where you learn life hurts.
Hmm. Yeah,
And then adulthood is the period of life you spend trying to manage that pain, you know. And our patterns are just pain management projects, right? So why is it so hard? Because we are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And so our entire quote unquote personality, our entire sort of relationship matrix and our all of our patterns are built around I don't want to have any more of that pain I had from earlier in life. And so, one of the things that we have to develop the capacity for is to be able to experience pain for just a moment. And I would say 90 seconds tops, because that's how long a painful moment will last if you don't do anything to it. We have to learn how to like actually go, oh, this pain isn't life threatening. It doesn't feel good. But instead of enacting my pattern of self protection in order to try to manage it, which creates way more suffering, then I'm just going to feel this pain for a moment and then get through it. So, one of the metaphors I offered at this event to close it out, and again, this isn't mine, I heard it somewhere, is the metaphor of putting a really hot coal in the middle of your open palm, right on that middle knuckle, right? And if you put a really hot coal on that knuckle, it's going to hurt a lot, right? That's going to be painful. It's going to be a pinprick of pain. But what we do with our patterns and our personalities and our relationship sort of cycles is we close our fist around that coal, trying to protect from more pain. And in doing that, we just create immeasurable suffering. And so what we discover if we learn how to keep our heart open and not clench up around that initially painful moment is we've got pain, but we can handle it. And that's probably where the metaphor breaks down because I wouldn't encourage anybody to leave a hot coal in their hand for very long. But we can handle that pain, right? We can decide what to do with that pain. And it's true that there's data, empirical evidence that shows that any emotion that starts to run through the body lasts about 90 seconds if you just let it run through. And so can you feel sad for 90 seconds? Can you feel afraid for 90 seconds? Can you just let that energy move through? And then on the other side of that, you're going to discover you're open hearted. You have access to your highest mind and all of your human capacities, and you can show up in a way that's a little more vulnerable and actually fosters connection rather than driving that disconnection.
yeah, yeah. So good. And the thing that I like to think about that helps me through this process is you're going from living on autopilot
Yes,
to living with intentionality,
that's right.
and that takes some time. That
Yes,
takes a lot of practice. I don't know that we ever really arrive,
yes, that's
but it's
right.
something I think we should be striving for.
That's right.
But you're so right. It's about embracing a little bit of pain now
Hmm.
to avoid a whole lot of suffering later.
And it's amazing how much of what masquerades as intentionality is actually autopilot.
Mm,
Like a classic example, I work with a lot of high achievers, who they say, well, I'm gonna work myself, to exhaustion until I get to a certain level of, accomplishment or wealth or whatever. And then they get there and they can't stop. And they thought that was being intentional the whole time, but it turns out it was just, autopilot masquerading as intentionality because it's part of their pattern of not getting still enough and not getting quiet enough long enough to feel the coal in your hand. I'm gonna hustle and move and earn, and once I get to this level of sort of achievement, then I'll have complete control of my world and I'll be happy and I won't need to deal with it. And then they get there and they go, I can't stop. Yeah, because if you stop, you're gonna have to see it. You're gonna have to feel it. So yes, like we want to restore people's actual intentionality about how they're showing up moment to their life rather than the obvious autopilots and the not so obvious ones. Yeah.
I love that. Dr. Flanagan, if there's someone listening today, and they're relating to this, they're like, man, I struggle, I get defensive, I get angry, I react instead of respond. I know better,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of my audience, they're followers of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
We read scriptures like be slow to anger, be patient, forgive, all these things, but that's just not where they're practicing at the moment. What would be kind of one practical step that they could take today to start moving in that direction? What would be an easy step to implement right where they are?
It's a great question. And the first thing I would do is say, also pay attention to Paul, who said, "Why do I do what I don't want to do?
Yeah, that's right.
But I don't
Relatable.
do what I do want to do." And I think he must have been triggered when he said that. Like, why? Like, why can't I force my nervous system to do the thing that I know my soul wants to do right now?
I'm never going to look at that passage the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's he gave us a lot of grace in that.
He did.
So what I would say is I would just start out where the process starts in the book, which is the chapter of step one, and the title of chapter one is Sense Your Conflict Coming.
Mm.
We actually, and you said it earlier, and I'm glad that this has sort of brought us back to it. We're not trying to avoid our triggered moments, right? Like that's not the goal here. We're trying to become so familiar with them that we can see them coming from a mile off,
That's right.
and we're not seeing our body as broken or the problem. We're seeing it actually as a great tool for starting to recognize that this is about to happen. Because I will often use the metaphor of a furnace to describe how a triggered moment actually happens. We think it happens instantaneously, but it's just because we're not paying attention and we missed all of the sort of buildup. So, like a furnace doesn't just start kicking on hot air full blast right away. You hear that little whoosh in the furnace where the pilot light kicks on and it's starting to heat up the air. And then the next step is the fan starts to go and it gets a little bit louder. And then finally it starts pumping hot air, right? Our bodies are like that too, for the most part. We have a pilot light that kicks on. Um, I'll give you an example. It's going to happen tonight. Actually, here's a good example. All right.
Real life, guys.
Real life. Oh my goodness. So my son's girlfriend's family has invited us out to dinner tonight to celebrate her birthday. Great. I wrap up my professional calls 2 hours before that. I'm going to have some notes to do, emails to return, phone calls to return. And then I plan to get in a probably 45 to 50-minute bike ride. Hopefully I will not go over the handlebars.
Yeah, slower this time. So.
That's right. So if I get behind in that sequence, I know how much my wife wants me to be there on time. I wish I was a better person and I wanted to be there on time. It doesn't matter to me that much. I'll be
Doesn't bother
completely
you.
honest,
Yeah.
right? But I want to be there on time for her, and there with her. And if I start to get behind in that sequence, my pilot light is going to kick on, and it's not going to kick on because I'm afraid of being late for the dinner. It's going to kick on because I'm going to be afraid of her disapproval and her being upset at me, right?
Makes sense.
And so as soon as that pilot light kicks on, I'm starting to set myself up for a triggered moment, right? And that's now the point where I know I have to start to get regulated, make some wise decisions, right? Can you get this all done in time, or do you need to skip the bike ride tonight? Or do you need to see if you can make it happen and know that you deserve what you get, and sort of show up open-heartedly to that moment, like. But the point being, your body gives you very early warning signs. There's data that I present in the book that says that if you really pay attention to your body's feedback, you'll get an 80% earlier warning that you're about to be triggered, because it gives you that much warning that it's starting to get activated. So that's the first thing I would encourage folks to do, is start to love your body in that sense. Start to recognize that it's giving you valuable information. And in fact, in the book, you'll get a URL to download a resource. I call it the See It Sooner Self Inventory, and it helps you do the name your number exercise. So I started doing this exercise with couples a while back. They both show up on my Zoom screen, right, for a couples coaching session, and I can just tell. And I used to think you had to be in a room with somebody to sense their energy. Nope. Like, you could feel it, digitally. And so I started to say, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being, I don't want to be here. I'm not even sure I want to be with this person, right? My heart is completely closed. To 10, my heart's completely open. It's like the day we met, the day we, got engaged, the day we got married. where are you at on that scale right now in this moment from 1 to 10, right? And one of the exercises I encourage in the first chapter of that book is get really good at knowing how your body shows up, how your thoughts show up, and how your impulses show up from 10 down to 1. Now, what people will say is, I'm not sure about the difference between 7 and 6. That's okay. Like pick a few anchors, 10, 7, 3, 1. Because if you get really good at noticing your internal state as your heart's closing and you're getting triggered, what you're going to be able to do is in the moment, you're going to be able to go, oh, whoa, what just happened? I just dropped from a 10 to a 6. I need to slow down here and pay attention to that. Because if I get to a 3, we all know what happens, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's the first encouragement that I would give to folks is your body is a valuable asset, and start to use it in that way to get to know your triggered moment before it even happens.
Well, there are clues, and I think that's what we're saying.
Yep, that's right.
And the autopilot keeps us from looking for those clues, but living with intentionality,
That's
true
right.
intentionality,
That's right.
really helps us identify some of those. And guys, it's about showing up as your best self.
That's right.
You know, you're really helping us, Dr. Flanagan, to show up as our best self, to really thrive and flourish as humans, and to take away some of the things that are really detrimental to relationships and
Yes.
detrimental to our lives. And so,
And
love how you worded that. Yeah,
I'm pretty convinced like most of our personal growth happens in our triggered moments. The rest is sort of getting to enjoy the fruit of our growth. But like those triggered moments, and I really see a shift in people in their journey when they actually do start to value the triggered moments. In the book, I talk about how a triggered moment is like an X on a treasure map, right? And if you found an X on a treasure map, you'd start digging into it and find the treasure underneath it, right? But the way we treat our triggered moments is like we try to bypass the X the next time, or pretend it didn't happen, or brush it out of the sand. And once you start to get some wins with your triggered moments in terms of learning about yourself, seeing patterns shift in your relationships, you're gonna be like, oh, this is actually where the really good stuff happens if we can
that's right.
slow down and be intentional.
Well, and that's what we all want. We want to be able to show up for one another as our best selves. We want to support one another. We want our relationships to be positive,
Yeah,
and to be glorifying to God.
that's
And
right.
this is tremendous work, and a tremendous resource. And you have been brilliant with us today. So thank you for sharing with our audience, and for those that are interested in your work. And I want to encourage each and every one of you, reach out.
Yeah.
This guy knows his stuff, and the book
No.
is fantastic. But give us a resource, your website, that kind of thing,
Yep.
for where they
Yeah.
can learn more about you.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd encourage folks, you've heard me mention a process several times today, and we sort of, I think, actually to your intuition, we were relatively sequential, but like we jumped around a little bit, and we didn't even get to the third part of the process, which is okay. Now that you know how to navigate these moments and sort of be open hearted through them, now what do you do to get reconnected, right? So one of the things I'd encourage listeners to do, I have a really short video tutorial that I've created that walks you through all 9 steps of the process, so you don't even need to read a whole book to sort of get familiar with it. And if folks just email me at drkellybonus@gmail.com, it's dr Kelly, Kelly, bonus @gmail.com. Then I'll send you a link to the video to download it, so you can have it. Full disclosure, it subscribes you to my online community, the Less Triggered Tribe. There are 15,000 of us going strong. And you can unsubscribe at any time, of course, if you want, but I actually don't think you will. I mean, it comes with some really nice benefits. It's an incredible community, and you'll have people to work on all this stuff with. Of course, if you're interested in just getting the book, it's at roadlesstriggered.com, and you can go ahead and get a copy, and available in paperback and digital and audio and all the different formats.
Thank you, brother. You have been a gift to me,
Mm.
and so what a pleasure it is, and a privilege to have you here on the show to share some of that with my audience today. So thank you, brother. Blessings to you and your family. Hope all goes well today with your schedule and
Thank you.
with the event tonight. May you be less triggered, and if you do
Amen.
experience triggers, may you be open hearted.
Amen.
So bless you, my friend. We'll
Thanks
talk
so
soon.
much.